running off at a tangent into an inner chamber, and through that down some narrow staircase leading to a door which in its turn led back into that very part of the house from which you thought yourself the farthest. A house that could never have been planned by any mortal architect, but must have been the handiwork of that good old builder, Time, who, adding a room one year and knocking down a room another year, toppling over now a chimney coeval with the Plantagenets, and setting up one in the style of the Tudors, shaking down a bit of Saxon wall there and allowing a Norman arch to stand here, throwing in a row of high narrow windows in the reign of Queen Anne, and joining on a dining room after the fashion of the time of the Hanoverian George I to a refectory that had been standing since the Conquest, had contrived in some 11 centuries to run up such a mansion as was not elsewhere to be met with throughout the county of Essex. Of course, in such a house there were secret chambers. The little daughter of the present owner, Sir Michael Audley, had fallen by accident upon the discovery of one. A board had rattled under her feet in the great nursery where she played, and on attention being drawn to it, it was found to be loose, and so removed, revealing a ladder leading to a hiding place between the floor of the nursery and the ceiling of the room below. A hiding place so small that he who hid there must have crouched on his hands and knees or lain at full length, and yet large enough to contain a quaint old carved oak chest, half filled with priests' vestments which had been hidden away, no doubt, in those cruel days when the life of a man was in danger if he was discovered to have harboured a Roman Catholic priest or to have had mass said in his house. The broad outer moat was dry and grass-grown, and the laden trees of the orchard hung over it with gnarled, straggling branches that drew fantastical patterns upon the green slope. Within this moat there was, as I have said, the fish-pond, a sheet of water that extended the whole length of the garden, and bordering which there was an avenue called the Lime-Tree Walk, an avenue so shaded from the sun and sky, so screened from observation by the thick shelter of the overarching trees, that it seemed a chosen place for secret meetings or for stolen interviews, a place in which a conspiracy might have been planned, or a lover's vow registered with equal safety. And yet it was scarcely 20 paces from the house. At the end of this dark arcade there was the shrubbery, where, half buried amongst the tangled branches and the neglected weeds, stood the rusty wheel of that old well of which I have spoken. It had been of good service in its time, no doubt, and busy nuns have perhaps drawn the cool water with their own fair hands. But it had fallen with disuse now, and scarcely anyone at Audley Court knew whether the spring had dried up or not. But sheltered as was the solitude of this Lime-Tree Walk, I doubt very much if it was ever put to any romantic uses. Often, in the cool of the evening, Sir Michael Audley would stroll up and down smoking his cigar with his dog at his heels and his pretty young wife dawdling by his side. But in about 10 minutes the baronet and his companion would grow tired of the rustling limes and the still water hidden under the spreading leaves of the water-lilies, and the long green vista with the broken well at the end, and would stroll back to the white drawing-room, where my lady played dreamy melodies by Beethoven and Mendelssohn, till her husband fell asleep in his easy-chair. Sir Michael Audley was 56 years of age, and he had married a second wife 3 months after his 55th birthday. He was a big man, tall and stout, with a deep, sonorous voice, handsome black eyes, and a white beard which made him look venerable against his will, for he was as active as a boy, and one of the hardest riders in the county. For 17 years he'd been a widower, with an only child, a daughter, Alicia Audley, now 18, and by no means too well pleased at having a stepmother brought home to the court, for Miss Alicia had reigned supreme in her father's house since her earliest childhood, and had carried the keys and jingled them in the pockets of her silk aprons, and lost them in the shrubbery and dropped them into the pond, and given all manner of trouble about them from the hour in which she entered her teens, and had, on that account, deluded herself into the sincere belief that for the whole of that period she had been keeping house. But Miss Alicia's day was over, and now, when she asked anything of the housekeeper would tell her that she would speak to my lady, or she would consult my lady, and if my lady pleased it should be done. So the baronet's daughter, who was an excellent horsewoman and a very clever artist, spent most of her time out of doors, riding about the green lanes and sketching the cottage children and the ploughboys and the cattle and all